take another live question over at the other microphone.
This question is for both speakers. If the transformative power of Jesus Christ is so great and it's the only way to live an abundant life and to never thirst again, how come we do not see more Christians living this transformed, abundant, spirit-filled life?
That's a really good question. If you would like to give me a list of names and addresses of all the hypocrites you know, I will be happy to go and pay some visits. I think your question is a very fair one. I think, as a matter of fact, I think it's more than fair. I want to be careful how I phrase this, because I'm part of the church. That's part of my identity. Ever since I myself became a Christian. But it does seem that the Bible has some very challenging words for the church. And as a matter of fact, just before coming up here, I was just reading through a speech that Martin King, Dr. Martin Luther King gave. Is that right?
Right.
And sorry, I'm in America, right? So I'm in the right country. Just checking. And when he was put in prison, he very famously wrote a letter from prison, which is a very impressive letter to read. His letter from Birmingham jail. All the more impressive when you remember he wrote that letter from memory. And I always knew he was a political activist, and I knew various things about him. I had no idea how well read he was. And you can always tell something about someone when they're writing a letter and they're making reference both to philosophy and to law and to theology. And he does it so well. But part of his letter, and I think it's something that needs to be heard today, is he says, we're living in America where the church is espousing one thing with its lips, but it's not living it with its life. He says, and therefore, he says, we are breeding a generation of people who've absolutely lost faith in the church, many of them losing faith in America as a country. And he shudders to think of the violence it may hold and the division it may cause in the United States of America as it went forward from that point. And he ends his letter with the words along the lines of, and now God's judgment rests on the church as never before. And I pray it may raise up in this decisive hour, and its voice may be heard. And what's more importantly, that it may actually live the moral values which it espouses. And so I think there has to be a challenge, and I think Scripture is very challenging to Christians about the way in which we live, and the means by which we live, and the values by which we live. And I'm going to have to confess that I think in the Western church, we've excused ourselves from a lot of that, and we've claimed comfort and convenience as being the highest ethic, rather than the principle of laying down your life in service for others. We're expecting everyone to lay down their lives in service to us, and that can't possibly be right. I think Raviji would probably agree with us and say, I know my experience is when I'm with the church in very poor parts of the world, when I'm visiting the church in parts of the world where you can be killed for simply becoming a Christian, the church I meet there is often very beautiful, very attractive, very humble, and very clear both in its message and in its lifestyle. But our affluence seems to have choked the purity of that message. And so I think we need, if you like, a challenge to the church. And if you are a Christian here today, I think maybe one of the challenges, since we're talking about tolerance, would be that we are called to live a thoroughly uncompromised life. Now, it's maybe sad that when most people in this room, if you were to close your eyes and imagine a thoroughly uncompromised Christian, someone who was totally uncompromising in their Christian faith, we would immediately think of someone who's very harsh, very difficult, and very unpleasant to spend time with. But the Bible invites us to pass judgment on everyone who claims to be a Christian. And part of that judgment, we're told, is to look at the fruit of their life. And the fruit of their life, we're told, for everyone who claims to follow Christ should be love, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control, and so on. So let's be thoroughly uncompromising about that. Let's just make sure that in no area of our life are we compromised in such that our lives are sending a message that will be inconsistent with the fruit that we're told to bear as Christians. So I think we may need to fall in love all over again with what it actually means to be a Christian, if you indeed are. And if you're not a Christian, if you've been put off by Christians, please don't reject the possibility of genuine life change and what it genuinely means to follow him, because you've encountered a few fakes. And it seems, especially in America, there's a lot of money to be made by faking it. Indeed, one friend I know who was training for the ministry said here, people will give a lot of money to authenticity, and if you can fake that, you've got it made. And maybe we just need to be maybe a little bit more, I think we do need to be more challenging with ourselves, and also as members of the church, with the church, to say, does this look like Jesus said it should look like?